been in this house?
All night.
All night? I'm a laughing stock. How did you get in?
I had my key.
Oh. And who's this?
I was just going to introduce you.
Who asked you to bring tarts in it?
Tart?
Who asked you to bring dirty tarts into this house?
Oh, listen, don't be silly.
You've been here all night?
Yes, we arrived from Venice.
We've had a smelly scrubber in my house all night.
Welcome to Theater Talk. I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
And I'm Susan Haskins.
There's a terrific revival of Harold Pinter's The Homecoming at the Court Theater. And one of the reasons it's so good, or I should say two of the reasons it's so good, are our guests tonight. We are joined by Raul Esparza. You know very well from Company. Great performance in that.
Thank you.
Taboo, not my favorite show, but you were wonderful.
We know that one.
So you've heard.
We are, and we always think of Raul as a musical theater actor, and now he's becoming a very serious dramatic actor.
Well, you know, it's exciting to do this stuff on Broadway.
Well, welcome to Theater Talk.
Thank you.
And the wonderful Ian McShane, who is playing a very menacing character in this play, well known to viewers of from Deadwood, which is, I guess, the thing that has now made you sort of an international celebrity.
Yeah, it's sort of distantly related to Max, as Al Swearingen. Good evening.
Welcome to Theater
Thank
Talk.
you.
All right. I know Harold Pinter. He's been battling cancer and has been unable to get over here to see this production. But I'm told that he kind of monitored it a little bit from London. Were you in touch with him at all? Because you're friendly with him from doing Caretaker originally.
I've done Caretaker originally.
Were you in touch with him?
They asked questions at the beginning. I mean, they had a sort of a running email thing, didn't they, Ralph?
Yeah, our stage manager, Roy Harris, would take notes, we didn't know this, on all the rehearsals, and send them, and one of the email recipients was Pinter. And then he started writing back.
Stop asking me bloody questions.
He doesn't want to explain anything.
So wait, I got to get this clear though. You would send him emails asking him questions about the character?
No, stage manager to send a
No, from my
report.
dad. Questions came up during, like, we you know, when you talk in an early stage of a play. And Sullivan, who I love, would just, you know, we'd just wrap around. We'd read and say, well, do you think there was Jeffy? Do you think Jesse had an affair with McGregor? Or do you think, you know, Jesse was a slut? That's Max's, you know, deceased wife? And questions like that. And little video that Roy had been typing it all up to Harold. And Harold apparently was very polite for a couple of days and then said, you know, stop asking me bloody questions.
Well, good
Make
for
up
him.
your own mind about it. Because I always remember Pinter saying one great thing, which I think is the keynote to this show, is that that he said when we were doing Caretaker, you know, there's a, by the way, before you do it, there's a couple of good jokes in there. Don't take it seriously and go out and have a good time. And that basically, I think, is the answer to most plays.
That seems to be what's happened with us.
Most plays, though, I think.
I'll get the jokes in. All I could say that happened in rehearsals is that we ended up, I've never laughed so hard in a rehearsal period in my life. And you could either go one of two ways with this show, but Dan Sullivan is such a clear and simple and straightforward guy in the way that he sets things up. We didn't sit around and analyze the play. We didn't write essays about it. We didn't try to answer every question. We just kind of did it. And then we'd find ourselves laughing ourselves into a stupor. I mean, falling out and unable to go on with the scenes because we didn't understand what we were doing. So it was either that or you'd sit around and write essays. And I much prefer this, where you just kind of laugh.
Yeah, and the essays production could be awfully dreary, I would imagine.
Well, Harold always talked about I spoke to him about 2 weeks ago. I thought it was time I called him, and I said, you know, I think you'd be proud of us, Harold. We're all having a good time. They're all terrific. It's a great, the classic hybrid cast, which, you know, I think works brilliantly in this show, you know, American and English actors. And also making a bit of money, Harold, which you'd be very pleased to hear how the show's doing very well. And he said, well, I once went to see a French production of it. I was invited over. He said it was the most boring evening of my life. 3 hours.
3 hours for The Homecoming?
Yeah, it was a 2-hour play with 3 hours.
Well, they lengthen the pauses?
Yeah, how long were those pauses?
Looks like, where are the scissors?
We're going to do that tonight.
We're going to do that. If we keep training, we'll do it in French. Let
Peter
Sellers to come in and do it. You know?
We'll all stare at each other.
Go past 11 o'clock and you'll get overtime.
Dan said we can't do any eyebrow acting.
Right. Yeah.
Let's talk about this, the Pinter pause. How does one play a Pinter pause? What is a Pinter pause?
It turns out that the pauses are just, they're exactly the breath you need to take in that moment.
It's part of the rhythm of the line.
And they're scripted.
They're scripted.
Yep.
And sometimes you might find that you're taking it a little bit longer than other times, but it's entirely the moment that you need. If you say the line clearly and something happens, you need a second to think about it, and then you say the next line. There's always a little adjustment. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's very short. So it's like a, and then I'm on. There's no sort of mystery about it. It's just, there's a rhythm to it, that's all. And some lines need to go boom, 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 and some lines you got to think before you respond. That seems to be about it.
And is it important to always make sure you get the pause? If it is in the script pause, you have to do the pause?
There's a discussion about that because I think originally Paul Rogers, who played this part originally, played the father, who ironically I did my first job with as an actor. He played my university professor whose wife had an affair with in a movie, but that's neither here nor there. But Paul apparently got very pissed off during the early rehearsals and said, we make the decisions where the pauses are. Because they said, no, it's true. But it was like, and they said, no, well, you may have done before that, but not this time, you know. Because the pauses are very clearly, but again, as Raul said, they're not, there's just like a pause, they're not written 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, or there's a dot, dot, dot sometimes, or there's a dot, dot. And you mostly find, because he sets up jokes beautifully, Harold Pinter writes, doesn't he? I mean, he's like a musical comedian, right? Where he goes, you almost hear a rim shot coming sometimes on the line.
You can feel the rhythm of it.
Yes, so that dictates the way you deal with it. Also, the audiences, we've now been told that it's okay to laugh at Pinter, I think, for the first time. That it's okay to react viscerally, rather than sit there going, what does this mean on every line?
And that makes such a difference.
It makes a huge difference. They come and enjoy themselves, don't they? They're there. You hear them buzzing beforehand, and when they start, and they're sort of ready to go with the play. And a lot of younger people are coming, which I think is very important. A young generation will get to see that Harold Pinter is, you know, not only this mythic playwright they may have read, but they can actually see him perform.
It's entertaining.
And entertaining, exactly.
Art is so much more compelling when you're not made to feel this is art. You must enjoy it. I found it interesting that he wrote it like music, that that this play sort of came forth out of him. He wasn't like piecing it together in this.
But it's incredibly efficient.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know how many rewrites he does, but it's so efficient. There's nothing wasted. If you so much as change a word, you'll kill the joke or you'll kill the moment without even realizing that you've done it. And it's like if you switch a couple of words here or there, you're like, oh, just blew that laugh. And the laughs are important because it is fundamentally a comedy. I read some essay that said it was a hideous comedy, but that's right. It is a very sick comedy, and if you don't get the laughs, then you're not going to disturb the audience enough.
Unlike with most great writers, he tells you without telling you on the page that once you got the audience, which you have, you can stop them laughing whenever you want to. You need to. I mean, you can step on it, jump on it. You don't let them. You let them laugh for a bit, and then you say, "Hold on," you know, and then you undercut and you cut that. It's a great piece to do.
You can stop them from laughing. You can scare them a minute too.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. And it's a great.
What was that interview he gave that we saw? There was an interview on Charlie Rose that he gave where he said that The Homecoming was his favorite play, and Charlie Rose asked why, and he said because the structure is sort of perfect, isn't it? And Charlie Rose said, well, what's the structure? And he said, well, it goes shh.
Yes, just falls off the legs.
But it does, actually. And if you play certain things just right, the audience is like, not funny.
You can feel that.
You can actually feel it happen, and then you're like, we got you. And there'll always be, as the curtain comes down at the end, you'll hear, we count them, you hear like, Jesus Christ.
Well, you're saying Jesus, the Jesus.
The Jesus is my favorite.
The intakes of breath.
This is when the wonderful Eve Best, who's playing the woman at this center of this
now, you
dysfunctional
don't have to give
family.
it away.
Well, I think people
don't
you think people watching theater talk know the Homecoming?
Not necessarily.
No,
I don't think you should feel
well, let's
so
put it when
compelled
Eve Best turns the tables on you.
She
gentlemen.
comes home. Whose homecoming is it?
Well,
that's another question.
Good question.
Could be anybody's. I mean, there's another theory that Harold said that when he wrote the play that it was the germ of the idea came from having a friend of his come home with a non-Jewish wife.
After a bunch of years in America, though, right?
Didn't say whether it was come from America or wherever, but he came home with a wife that wasn't Jewish, and that was obviously, it caused some kind of rupture in the family, and that was the germ of the idea that he based the play on. He also wanted the play originally played by Max, the part played by a comic actor.
Oh, well, that certainly makes sense. Makes sense.
That's always interesting.
Yeah.
He wasn't, of course. It was, well, he's a great actor, Paul Rogers, he could play anything, but his first instincts were they wanted it played by like
it's a kind of funny King Lear.
But he did. But
is it obvious to you, Raul, that Harold Pinter began as an actor? That this is an actor writing for actors?
Yeah, because there are actually James Frain, who plays Teddy, is a fantastic actor. Once made an observation because he and I are smoking cigars at the top of Act Two, and there's a certain point where our cigars are supposed to have gone out, and we were so worried about putting the cigars out. And actually, if you stop smoking where he says to stop smoking, and then you say the line, 20 minutes later, your cigars have gone out.
Oh, interesting.
And, and James said, he worked this out. The actor worked this out,
Harold Pinter, the actor.
Harold Pinter, the actor, worked that out. Knows exactly how long these moments will take, and there's no sort of magic to it. It's just like, okay, technically, this has to happen, and so it does, and you don't need to worry about it. And you can also feel, with Lenny, which is such an operatic part in some ways, and in other ways totally very sly and funny, but he goes such extremes. He's a person who is putting on a performance the whole time. There's nothing he says or does that is to be taken at face value. And he's always making fun of somebody, or he's always inventing an emotion but not really feeling it. And there's a lot of the joy of kind of hitting the stage and tearing it up a little bit in that. So it's a fun part. You sink your teeth into it and have a good time every night. You never know what's going to come out.
Now, both of you, as great actors, do you find when you're playing a twisted, conniving person that this affects you in your daily life, that you take this?
No.
Would you like to give us an example?
And I mean, now you are a famous twisted, conniving person from television and stage. But I mean, I've heard of actors that they say, I can't shake it when I go home.
Of course you could.
Okay.
It's a job. Somebody said, Billy Wilder once made that famous remark about you. They said he was doing this wonderful interview with Volker Schlondorf. Remember? It's a big interview. Yeah. And about the first line is that Schlondorf is this great German intro about the great artist and why do you do a job and do a gig. And then Wilder says, for the check. First of all, the check. There is a reason why we do this, because we're getting paid. So, okay, that's the first reason in a way.
I'm not actually a pimp.
Although both of you were committed to this long before that check was.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, as actors, you're thieves and vagabonds anyway. I mean, you started out, one to be entertainment front, the other one to be nicking the wallets around the back.
Yeah.
The Globe Theatre. So, but it's a great job. It beats working, as we say, any time. I mean, some days it's a gas, to walk into the theatre at night and you think, here we are doing a Harold Pinter play, and it's and the audiences love it.
And they're buying it, yeah.
And they're buying it, and it's a great group of actors. I mean, James Frade, Michael McKeon, who is, again, from a great comedic background. He's a
great actor.
All right, so it helps to be a comedian to play Pinter. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah,
I think he's a comic actor.
Certainly. So watching Michael put together that performance in rehearsals was incrable.
And we should say his character is sort of the only benign character.
He's the only human character, really, in some ways.
He's totally deluded, but yeah.
well, that's human.
Sam gives as good as he gets in his own schneidi way. He comes on, it's always like, oh yes, I was driving your wife about. I'm sure it's very nice. He's always giving his little niggly character. The only those vulnerable characters, Joey,
Yes.
Which is the wonderful Gareth Sachs, and you don't know whether is he, dare I say it, is he McGregor's son?
Is he McGregor's son?
You're definitely my son, I know.
Yeah, we're so alike.
The relationships are unclear, except for the fact that you are.
Oh, very much.
I'm clearly
your son. I mean,
we're so alike, and that's why they hate each other and love each other.
But you don't quite know the relationships with the other brothers, who the mothers were for these.
Although I think Teddy is Max's son.
I think Teddy is. Yeah.
Wait, I'm getting confused.
Teddy's the eldest son.
And I've seen it.
Can we email Harold Pinter now?
Stop asking questions.
But it's sort of, there isn't a big backstory on these people. And, why are they this way towards each other? And in their own
why are they running each other down, attacking and undermining each other's...
It's an interesting question.
I think Pinter made that remark, didn't he, again, about it's a constant, we have that expression, taking the piss.
Yeah.
It's like it's a constant, every line is actually a put down. It's a
just undermining the guy.
Undermining everybody.
It's
everybody
does it to everybody. Sort of stake their territory, I think. And it's
except these are more feral. These are more feral in their own way.
I mean, well, it's beyond being very smart. I mean, I think feral is more correct. But, I mean, why are they constantly so committed to bringing each other down? And
I think one of the interesting things about the play is that Pinter is able to write, I think it keeps them alive. He's able to write family dynamics and remove a little bit of the civility that we're used to. That's all. He just takes a little layer of skin off.
But isn't that great theatre?
Which is great.
Yes,
no other medium does that. Theatre strips away artifice and strips away all the...
I think people behave like this.
And people behave like they would want to,
we do this to each other. We're always sort of competing and suspicious and wanting to, but we just don't quite admit it. There's an extra
cut
layer.
the fat.
He's just cut that off and shown you people acting like baboons in a forest.
I think it's because he comes out of the theater and he sees how we theater people often behave. Constantly, you know, one-upping each other, attacking each other, the rivalries, the jealousies within an acting company that he came out of. I mean, some scholars have made the point that the families in Pinter are often sort of the family dynamic of an acting company, because he traipsed around England before he became a writer, doing these sort of second-rate boulevard-type comedies.
Well, like, you know, that Wolfit Company, the last of the great actor-managers.
Yeah.
Boys used to tell that story. It's like, I'll tell it now as we're in a perfect setting for it. Remember I told the story of Donald Wolfit, who was the great actor-manager of England, you know, was doing, like, go off and do all the great plays, or 1 a week, 3 a week, all the parts. He'd play them all. But just when he did his first TV show, it's like, we are now, and he's in, and they rehearsed. They're in the studio finally, and he goes, hello. He calls up to the controller. Hello. This light on my camera. They said, yes. He said, yes. It's red, isn't it? They said, yes, that means you're on camera. He said, well, mine's off. They said, well, that's because we switched to another camera. No. No, it has to be on all the time. So he invented a box and put a red light on it. And it became known as the Wolfit camera. BBC television for years would love it. He wasn't, yes, my light's on, I'm all right. I can act now, the light's on. If he couldn't, it was on somebody else.
I can't help but say that my red light was off, and now it's on.
That's for you,
which red light is on.
I have to ask you both about two productions you were both in, a little bit of history because they were important and fascinating productions. You, Taboo, the classic Broadway flop, really, of the last 10
Taboo,
years.
That Michael helped to support.
Yes,
so
he was so wonderful.
marvelously.
I was a champion
He was
of
just
that.
a real
I was
champion.
pintering that. I was taking the piss,
He
as you would say.
nurtured that show
I
to
feel
the
like
grave.
there was just so much love pouring from the post columns on a weekly basis that you know, we're all in that one together.
Now, I have to. Have you seen Rosie O'Donnell made a documentary of the making of Taboo, which I don't think has really been seen.
It's a mythic
very often.
thing that's out there.
It doesn't exist? No, but she made it. Have
I'm
you
sure
seen
she
it?
did. I know it's out there. There were so many cameras on us all the time.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it.
I tried to get a copy, and oddly, they wouldn't send it to us.
I can't imagine why.
What was the experience like that, though, being in a show that was scrutinized almost every day in the papers?
Ultimately, that had a lot to do with Rosie going through that trial, and the.
This is when she was suing the magazine company. Yeah.
And you know, when we first put the show together, we did a workshop that was just thrilling, and then we were in the rehearsal hall, and we had our last performance in the rehearsal hall, and I thought, this is a massive hit. But the pressure on the trial and the pressure on putting the show together in tech started to just get. It was just this tightening, this heat, and you couldn't make a move that wasn't analyzed, and I think it sort of broke the creative team's back in a weird way, trying to make. Well, Chris, our director, I think felt a great deal of pressure. Chris Renshaw. Not Ashley. Ashley, not at all. Chris Renshaw, I think, felt a great deal of pressure to sort of deliver what he had delivered in London, and couldn't sort of make the sorts of changes that needed to happen over the amount of time that needed to happen, because there was this time frame, and then was dealing with the fact that Rosie was coming back from the trial every day and trying to see results. This was the one good thing she had. She's one of the most sort of extraordinarily generous people I've ever met. But the generosity sometimes can be damaging, because you give and give and give to the point that people sort of can't function for themselves. It was an interesting thing that was happening. It was like smothering us with love.
But she could then turn on you and
she could
scream and yell and cut your legs
but
out.
it was also, she needed this thing to work. And she believed in it, and I will stand by the fact that I think it's one of the greatest scores I've had the privilege to sing in years. Yeah. And there was a marvelous sort of series of ideas inside the book that, you know, things were just getting cut left and right, for timing, for numbers, for featuring different moments in the show that maybe weren't the best thing to be featured. There were things that happened in the workshop where there were some actors playing different roles who were marvelous actors, and things were getting bigger and bigger that really should have gotten smaller and smaller. Stuff like that happens, and you don't even notice it. It's that thing that William Goldman talks about in the season, where he says, you know, a show begins to change and it starts to shift directions like a cruise liner, you know, and you didn't even see that it was happening.
But once it starts going this way, it's very difficult.
It's very hard to steer it back.
Boom, the iceberg.
And you didn't even notice it had happened.
And And I was going to ask you, you had your sort of musical theater tough one with Witches of Eastwick, of which you were the star in London. And what went wrong there?
I don't know. The book was strong enough. I think it's always challenging to do something different. I'd never done. I mean, I'd sung.
That's right. That was the first musical you'd
never done a musical. So you think, oh yeah, this would be interesting. You know? And it was great. I enjoyed the first 6 months. And then when they decided to want to change it and want to change the music, put it in a smaller theatre, and start not doing new numbers but just cutting, I thought, no, this is the time that it's time to, no.
And the heavy on that show, as Rosie O'Donnell was in Taboo, would have been Cameron McIntosh.
You see, Cameron just can't. If you had somebody like, say, a Trevor Nunn directing it, who locks the doors, Cameron's not allowed in the rehearsal room. Yeah. But Eric, who's a nice guy, directed it, did a perfectly serviceable job to a time, but got steamrolled by Cameron, who just come in the rehearsal room, and because, I've got the money, it's against the same thing.
It's a similar thing.
And I'll throw money at it, but Cameron should admit now and again that he hasn't, I think he reached a stage where you can't admit you haven't got a big hit on your hands. You've got a medium-sized show, which could have been better if you'd spent more time on it, but it's no good putting it on and then convincing everybody, I'm still keeping it on, losing a lot of money. He did that with that thing of the...
Martin Guerre.
Martin Guerre, thank you. Redoing it, taking it around, doing it again. You want to say, enough already, take it off, And, but it was interesting doing a show. I mean, the way, I must say, I do find it sort of musical. It's a little strange that they do think they're doing something special and nobody else is a part of, which I love to think. Nobody else in the world knows what they're doing. You say, for Christ's sake, you're singing a song. It's not
yeah, it does seem like it's some sort of
But they think,
alchemy.
we're creating magic here. As a magician says, disappear. Very quickly.
Critics say, disappear.
It can all go away. So it was a fascinating experience and well worth it. Teaches you a lot. In the end, it was. I mean, it did pretty well. It did okay for them.
Yeah, right.
But I think if he was going to do it somewhere else, to bring it to America, he'd have to revamp it. Spend more time on the book and make it darker. Because I mean, it's from the I'd never read the original Bob Dyke, and the book is black beyond belief. Yeah. Funny you should mention the season, because we were in that book with Judy, first show I ever did in Broadway.
Which was
The Promise.
Oh, right.
That's in the book. That was this season because The Homecoming occupied the 66, 67 season.
Yeah, that's right.
And we did The Promise, McKellen, Dench, and me in 67, 68. Not Dench, Eileen took over, Eileen Atkins.
Eileen, yeah,
because
sure.
Judy was doing cabaret. And we had this, that's an interesting thing to enjoy. Enormous success in London. It was the biggest hit, a straight play in 67. And to come to Broadway and sort of...
Nobody cared.
I think we had 17 Puerto Rican students learning English who came to the first matinee, because we could hear, I said, they're learning English.
Was there a difference, or they just didn't?
I don't know. I don't think at Broadway, who knows the reason why?
Yeah.
It got, I mean, in London it was fantastic. Yeah. It was a great cast here. Eileen replaced Judy. I mean, it's a terrific
great
actress.
Yeah,
perfect. It's just they just didn't like the play. Maybe it was the Cold War was a lot to do with it. Yeah. They thought, I had a lot of things about Russians don't have phones.
If you go back to the season and you look at Goldman's chapter on The Homecoming, the Pinter play that year, Goldman attacks The Homecoming. He attacks Pinter in that book.
He does?
Really?
Absolutely, yeah. He says this is phony, baloney, all this kind of stuff. There's less there than meets the eye. That was the kind of
He also didn't like Sandy Dennis for some reason.
These
sort of random things.
And you value this book.
I do value this book. It's one of my favorite books about the Broadway theater, simply because you read it and go, oh, wow, nothing's changed.
Do you think that's the case? Aside from the ticket prices.
There are great similarities, except for the ticket prices. There's a sense of, but then that sounds depressing because it hasn't changed at all, and yet at the same time it's sort of wonderful, because how many times do people run around ringing bells and saying, "Oh, Broadway's dead, Broadway's dead"? Well, they said the same thing back then, and it's still doing just fine.
Well, what's nice also is that for a long time they were saying there's no straight plays on Broadway, and now this season we have The Homecoming and The Seafarer, and it's terrific, all terrific plays, doing well, I believe.
Yeah.
And may I say from the bottom of my heart, as long as actors like you will come to Broadway, it's going to stay alive.
I certainly.
It's very nice.
I want to see you guys come to a musical produced jointly by Rosie O'Donnell and Cameron
McIntosh. Do it together.
And we're going to set ourselves on fire.
Raul Esparza, Ian McShane, terrific performances in The Homecoming at the Court Theatre. Thanks for being our guest tonight on Theatre Talk.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Susan.
I don't believe you're smoking at the moment. I'm sure you won't object if I move the ashtray.
And now perhaps I'll relieve you of your glass.
I haven't quite finished.
You've consumed quite enough, in my opinion.
No, I haven't.
Quite sufficient, in my own opinion.
Not in mine.